Hey everybody, Casey Miller here from Positive Coaching Alliance. Sorry we are a little late for this week's episode of Ask PCA Live with one of our awesome National Advisory Board members. This week we have Greg Dale from Duke University who is joining us to talk about many things, including the current situation that we're dealing with right now with the coronavirus and how to keep athletes motivated and connected. And he has a ton of experience as a sports psychology professor and also working as a sports psychologist for Duke Athletics specifically. So we're super excited and thankful that, Greg, you've taken time out of your day in North Carolina to be joining the PCA community to share some tips and tools. And so I invite all of you who are tuning in to join us. And if you have questions on your own for Greg, please chat them into the live stream, and we will be monitoring those comments and asking them as they come through. So if you're watching, let us know where you're watching it from. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you again, Greg, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. Thanks. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes. So I think, obviously NCAA sports are not happening right now. March Madness was canceled. But you having worked with athletes, 3 weeks ago when things were normal, and now kind of given where we are now, can you talk about some of the things that you've been speaking to the Duke athletes about here over the last week or so, given the changes in our country and our world?
Sure. Yeah. So absolutely, it's been an incredible experience that none of us have ever really had before. And with athletes, particularly our kids at Duke, spring sport athletes, seniors, for example, their careers are over essentially unless the NCAA allows them to have an extra year, and they might have to pay for it themselves. Who knows what's going to happen? But one of the things that we've really tried to do is help them have a grieving time. This is literally when you put so much into something and you invest so much of your life into something, it becomes a part of who you are. And so part of you has been taken away, so to speak. So I think it's really important that we allow athletes to have some time to be able to deal with that and truly go through that grieving process. So have really tried to do that. And our kids at Duke had a 2 week spring break rather than one. And so now they're back in classes and we're doing everything virtually. And so now that classes have started back, the message has sort of changed from me now. It's about really starting to try to get into a rhythm now, start to get into a routine and try to find whatever works for you. That routine might change daily, but finding something that you could say was a routine, because it's important to feel like you're being productive and you've got some direction in what you're doing. So really, that's the number one thing. Really, also trying to get them to set some daily goals for themselves, not thinking so much long term, because who knows how long this is going to go on for us. So, what are some of those daily goals that you can set? Maybe write them down and check them off. Just be able to feel like that you're having some accomplishments here. Another thing we've talked a lot about and really tried to do and help them do is to stay connected with each other. During this time of isolation, more importantly than ever, it's important for us to stay connected. And certainly texting is one way to do that. But we've really tried to do a lot of Zoom stuff, a lot of Facebook, a lot of being able to do some things where you can virtually and actually see each other and stay connected with that. And up with some great ideas about having some mini competitions with each other and showing themselves do their last rep in their workouts, or trying to be creative in how they can stay connected with each other and have some fun while they're doing that. So those
I
are a
love that.
couple things. Yeah, yeah. One other thing too, I would say, is that really trying to help them compartmentalize a little better. Like our athletes at Duke, they walk around all day in their Duke gear, and but really trying to compartmentalize more, where when you do your workout stuff, go put your workout stuff on, but when you're done, take your shower, put street clothes on, and then go study, or put your street clothes on and do whatever else you're going to do. It just helps you have a better opportunity to be in the moment, so to speak. So those are some of
I
the
love
things
that
that we've
advice.
been talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to, so Martin DeSold, thanks so much for tuning in. He said he's an athletic director from Beaumont High School in California. Thanks for watching. Jamie Reddy in Potomac, Maryland. Thanks for joining. Jeannie Garcia from, Jeannie Garcia says, I'll never forget our time in Hawaii. Thank you for taking time for
Yes,
us
yeah.
today.
Hi, Jeannie.
I know
Yes,
a lot of
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if you're tuning in and watching, I see there's quite a few people that are live tuning into this with Greg Dale, who's a sports psychologist, a professor at Duke University and with Duke Athletics. So we have him here for the next, 20 minutes or so. So if you have questions that you're dealing with, your team or your school, and you want specific advice from Greg here, please rate those in the comments. I'm following along, and then we'll ask those. And Carmen, it looks like you asked, you have some coaching partners who were unable to make this. This session will live on after the live, so you'll be able to share the stream and still watch Greg's advice, post this live session. But Carmen, if you have any specific questions, chat those in. So I wanted to ask, you talked a little bit about like finding ways to be competitive and maybe some friendly competitions. Are there any specific ideas? Because I know there's probably quite a few coaches that are watching right now. Is there any advice that a coach could implement with their team about some type of friendly competition that they could do virtually through Zoom or Google Hangout or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, coaches are pretty creative, I find. But I think anything you can do, like for soccer instance, just having simple things like being able to who can dribble the ball the longest without it falling, or doing really simple things. It doesn't have to be overly complex. Or you could do small groups of things where small groups of your athletes, if you have a larger team, are teaming up together and compiling points in terms of their workouts and what they're doing, and have the blue versus the white group, and just doing simple things. They don't have to be overly creative to just help your kids stay engaged and still feel some of that competitiveness part of what athletics is all about.
Totally. And I see Luke Adams wrote in, he's from Juneau, Alaska. I just have to say, Luke, I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska, originally, born and raised. So thanks for tuning in all the way from Alaska. He's an athletic director at Thunder Mountain High School. So, Luke, thanks for joining. Mike McGurk wrote in with a question. He has said, do you have any thoughts about helping seniors of spring sports deal with the possible end of their careers? And
Yeah,
Mike, if you want to comment too, if you're talking about this from a parent or a coach perspective, let us know. But yeah, any thoughts about kind of seniors who may be, saying goodbye to their last season ever?
yeah, that's a great. First of all, Luke, I lived 5 years in Alaska as a kid, so I definitely part of my heart's in Alaska, and I happen to know Mike. Mike and I've done some work together in the past. A great athletic director there in Missouri. Yeah, that's a great question about the seniors. And my point early on, I'd like to elaborate on it, is that you do need to allow them to grieve. And I know that might sound like a strong statement, but literally a part of them has been taken away. A part of them has, just like in the death and dying process, much like when an athlete is injured, part of their identity has been taken away. So it's really important to allow them to experience the frustration and the anger and the disappointment, and allow them to experience that. I think you need to acknowledge that and let them know that while you might not be able to be empathetic and say, "Well, I know what you think because I know how you feel." I think it's important that we can't necessarily be empathetic and put ourselves in their shoes, but we can show compassion. And compassion shows that I care and I'm here to listen and help you. I think we also have to be careful about saying, look, in the big scheme of life, what you're going through is no big deal. At some point, yeah, but I think initially we have to allow that this is their world and that's their experience, and it's important to allow them to go through that and allow them to experience that, because if they don't, it's going to linger on longer and longer. And then at some point, in the next little bit of time, it's about looking forward now and what can I do going forward? What do I have control over now going forward? And I have to start looking forward. But it is important to allow them to spend some time and experience that grieving process.
Totally. And, Lindsay Gottlieb, who's an assistant coach with the Cleveland Cavaliers and also is on the National Advisory Board of PCA like you, she said the exact same thing last Thursday, was just giving players a chance to grieve and go through that process. And it's okay to feel really, really sad. And so just acknowledging that that's okay. We did have another question that came in. Let's see here. Let me get back to the Alexandra Ann wrote in, and she was wondering, how are you keeping the coaches connected and engaged, specifically the coaches? And I know you work with a lot of the coaches at, again, Duke Athletics. So, Alexandra, thanks for asking that question. Keep them coming. I'm following along. So let us know any questions you have that come through. And yeah, so any thoughts about that in terms of coaches being connected, Greg?
Yeah. So, number one, I think we need to recognize that for coaches, this is really traumatic for them as well. I mean, they live, eat, and breathe their sport, and they're putting as much as more sometimes than the athletes themselves, and it's been taken away. Right now they're thinking I should be at practice right now, or we're getting ready to play so and so this weekend, and so I think for them it's a grieving process as well. So I think we have to acknowledge that it's just as hard for coaches as it is for the athletes. And I also would say for coaches, it's really important for you to stay connected with your athletes and not just texting with them. That's fine, but you need to be able to look at them. You need to be able to see them. You need to um, be able to. This is a time where coaches talk a lot about. There's this great saying that culture will lead strategy for lunch every day, and I believe it'll lead it for breakfast and dinner and everything else. And one of the things that coaches argue is that they can't spend time on it because there's not enough time. Well, now is an incredible opportunity for you to help your athletes with two things, the culture of your team and the mental part of their games, because they can't physically be together. But boy, you guys could spend a great amount of time talking about and engaging them with what type of culture do we want to have going forward. It's a great chance for you to stay connected with them that way.
That's great advice. And she commented again, she's tuning in from Chicago, and she's a mental health counselor in a Division I athletic department. So, Alexandra, thanks for that question. Another one was from Emily Ogden. She is wondering that we often hear from leaders, athletic directors, coaches, and parents how to help athletes be more mentally tough. And she's saying, how would you define that term, mentally tough? And what can leaders do to support their athletes now to be, mentally tough? And kind of what does that mean to you? Emily, thanks for that question.
Yeah, that's a great question because we throw that around all the time, and mental toughness to me is it's your ability to be able to focus on the relevant and be able to maximize your potential when it gets tough. It's easy to be mentally tough when everything's going your way, when you're getting all the playing time you want, you're scoring all the goals, you're the star of the show, so to speak, and it's easy to have a great attitude. It's easy to be positive. It's easy to when you have the role on your team that you want. It's easy to be mentally tough, but mental toughness is doing all those things when you don't get that, when you're not getting to play the role that you want. How do you continue to still be a positive role model or a positive teammate? And when it does get really tough, you work to be resilient and to have some grit there when the stuff hits the fan or it's not going well. And certainly this is an opportunity right now where all of us can work on and develop our grit and resilience, as Angela Duckworth talks a lot about in her work. But this is an incredible opportunity that we're passionate about something, and it's been taken away, and life changes for us. How do we maintain our composure? How do we maintain a positive attitude? How do we stay resilient in these difficult times? To me, that's the epitome of being mentally tough.
That's a great question, Emily, and thanks so much. I just want to call out Stephanie Barnwell said she's listening from Bermuda, so that's amazing. And we also have an SWA and SAC advisor from Concordia University tuning in, and then Michael Godfrey from Thousand Oaks, California, an athletic director. So thank you guys all for watching, and I hope if you're finding this helpful too, click that share button so that more people can see this both while we're live right now and then also after the fact so people can tune in and listen. So click share, share this with your networks. We're going to be doing this every Thursday with a National Advisory Board member. and every Tuesday with the PCA trainer. So encourage you guys to, like the PCA page and look for more of these. I want to bring up a question from Carmen Samuel. Carmen, she said she loved your advice about kind of the one tip for athletes changing their clothes potentially, like after they work out and setting routines. And she was just wondering, do you have any other tips for generating routines for adolescents while they adjust to this kind of new temporary way of life in doing most things virtually, including school? So maybe any other
Yeah,
specific tools?
that's a great question. I'm dealing with that personally myself. I have a couple teenage boys still home, and they go to a public school. Not everyone has access to internet, so the principal has they have work, but the principal's come out and said you're not going to be punished and or penalized if you don't do it. So, wow, where's the where's the motivation come from then for teenagers? I think just a couple of things that I would encourage all parents out there to think about, and me included, is that I think it is important to help kids have routines, but I think it's important to help them to provide them choices. And what I mean by that is that if we perceive choice in something, we're going to be more motivated to do it or more self-motivated. So, for instance, they're going to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on homework or a particular topic. Maybe allow them to have a choice in when they do that. Maybe they allow them to have a choice in when they do their workout routine. It might not be exactly the same time you do yours, and you might wake up and think, I want to do it right away. Well, maybe they want to do work first and then do their workout routine a little bit later on. Or here are three options. You choose one of those. If we can help them allow them to have choice, they're going to absolutely be more motivated around the routine part of it. And then I also think this is a really hard part of it too, but if we can help them see the connection or the reason why it's important for you to stay focused now. And so if you ask them, what are your long-term goals? What are your dreams? If you want to play in college or you want to separate yourself in some way, well, that's your goal. We've got to help them sort of see the connection for the reason why it's important to do this stuff and be disciplined today to help us achieve that. And if they can't make that connection, it's really harder for them to be motivated. So we have to try our best to help them do that.
I love that advice. And Justin Ferdinand, sorry if I mispronounced your last name, he just said great information. He's listening as an athletic director from Sarah High School in San Mateo, California. So Justin, thanks for watching. Also Elizabeth from Trinity, Missouri, I think, a tennis coach. Thank you. So another question from Martin. Martin is wondering, he said, our student athletes have very different ideas about adversity and being able to stay focused. How do you work with your student athletes on building a growth mindset to offset often the fixed mindset?
Yeah. Again, another really good question. One of the ways that you can really help athletes determine whether they have more of a fixed or growth mindset is the narratives that they tell themselves, the self-talk that they have. And that's one of the exercises I do with our kids is really get them to think about. I'd like for you to start to be more aware of the narratives. Even write it down. What are those conversations that you're having with yourself on a daily basis? And when you mess up or you bomb a test or you make a mistake or in a crucial situation, how you talk to yourself has a big impact or it shows a big indication of whether you are having more of a growth or a fixed mindset. So after let's say I didn't do well on the test, for instance, I get it back and say, wow, you're such an idiot. You're never going to be able to do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. That's very different than saying, wow, okay, I bombed that. But you know what? Really, it's because I didn't study. It's because I wasn't sleeping well before. Uh, as an athlete, I got beat not because I'm stupid and I'm slow and I'm this. It's because I wasn't moving my feet or I need to work on this or it's about this. And so that to me is a really simple exercise that you can begin to try to help your athletes be more aware of is how do they talk to themselves? What are the constant narratives they have, but also in particular when things don't go their way or when they mess up? what sort of dialogue are they having with themselves, and help them maybe even write it down, and so they can begin to see how can I change this into more of a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset.
Great question. Great advice. Again, we're here with Greg Dale, a sports psychologist and a professor at Duke University and works in Duke athletics. And so we're going to be here probably for another 5 or so minutes. I know we got started a tiny bit late due to technical difficulties. So if you have any final questions that you want to get in, please comment in the live feed and we will make sure that those get asked. One from Chris Ward, he said that he did a hangout on Zoom with his the 14-year-old boys team that he coaches, and he did a movie discussion. So maybe they all watched a movie together, then they came back and discussed it as a team, and he used it as a way to, check in and connect. He's just wondering, do you have any other advice for things like that to do to connect with his team? In this case, is 14-year-old boys.
Yeah, so I love that idea, by the way, and I hope all the coaches out there are taking note of that, and because that's a great idea. It's a great way to help your kids stay connected. Um, I think that boy, our coaches, one of our coaches created the staff created a crossword puzzle that was totally related to their team and their program and the history of their program and like
Love that.
I scored the game winning goal in the national championship. My brother and I have a coach on the staff. So it was really a great way. And they came back and see who could guess them all, and they all talked about it and had some fun with that. That's another little competition piece, but they also came back together and talked about it. So that took a little creativity on the coach's part, but it was a great thing because they could absolutely relate to that. I think you should again bring your team together, and you guys could have conversations around, and for 14-year-old boys, boy, really being able to help them open up and be somewhat vulnerable with each other is an awesome thing, and maybe they feel a little safer to do it in a situation like this as opposed to when when they're right there in the same room together, literally physically, but just getting at a deeper level of what do you one of the exercises I do with teams is I have 300 black and white photos. I realize you can't all have these photos, but they pick a photo and then they show it up to their teammates. This represents a significant event that's happened to me in my childhood, or another one is something that I want to do in life other than this sport, or another one is how do I view my role on this team. Another one is something that none of the other guys on the team know about me. It's really very cool. You could have kids or athletes have some fun drawing, and a lot of us aren't very good artists, but that's okay. And they hold up a picture of, hey, this represents something that happened to me, a significant event that happened during my childhood. And that could be a really cool thing, but it could also be one athlete held up a picture of John Lennon holding up a peace sign, and this was when my dad said peace out to my family when I was 12 years old, and wow, people had a different perspective on that athlete now, and maybe have a little different understanding of why he or she does some of the things that they do. And they don't have to be that deep. You can be fun and just get to know each other a little bit better. I would highly recommend something like that.
Those are amazing, very specific ideas that I hope, all the coaches and athletic directors that are watching, can share that with their community. I love that. Thank you. And Chris, the one who asked the question, said that's a great idea. Thanks so much. Crossword puzzle is a great idea. Lots of comments coming in. A couple people have asked that if you have any book recommendations. I think just in general, but also if there's any that come to mind, like for this specific situation, that might be a good book to read, either for the team or just for the coach. I know that's a tough question, but Michael Godfrey, thanks for writing that. And then also, I think it was Carmen. Carmen, yeah, also asked about the books. So
Yeah,
again,
sure.
we'll be here probably taking a couple more questions. So as he's thinking about his book recommendations, if anybody else wants to write in any last questions, definitely can pass those along. So yeah, what are your thoughts about books?
Yeah, so um, there's one called Legacy. It's about the All Blacks, the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. I would argue, have one of the one of the best sports team culture slash environments in the world. They're very successful at what they do. So any coach that's looking at, or they want to allow their captains to read something around leadership and around building culture and having some ideas around that, that's a great book I would highly recommend out there for sure. There's lots of them on the mental part of the game. I happen to have one called It's a Mental Thing. I have some books and stuff I've written some stuff for parents and stuff for coaches, and have some videos and all that. You can get all that stuff on Amazon. But yeah, the one I've written for kids is only 100 pages, big print, and lots of pictures, so it doesn't take long to read. So, it's I would argue, very practical and can give them some really good advice about the mental part of the game, so to speak.
Yeah, and we'll follow up after this feed ends and share a link to all of Greg's books, so that if you guys want to hop on and check those out, we'll put those in the comment section so anyone who's on the feed can see that. We'll definitely share that. Mark Aria said that The Boys in the Boat is a great book.
Yes,
And
yes,
then
that's another
Tim
really.
Crother said Legacy is awesome. So Tim's commenting
Yep.
in. And then another one was Inner Game of Tennis. Amanda Kostick said that she also loved that. I've heard of Inner Game of Tennis as well.
Yeah,
So
of course. Yeah, and
um,
that's a classic. That's a classic, and it's done the test of time. And I would say You Win in the Locker Room, or In the Locker Room First, is another one. That's a good one from a culture
okay,
standpoint. Yeah.
awesome. So maybe last question before we wrap up is about podcasts. Do you have any
Yes.
podcasts that you are listening to, or that you maybe the Duke community is really high on right now that people might be interested in tuning into?
Yeah. Boy, that's something that I personally need to do better with. I'm starting to listen to a few while I'm running. I'm starting to do that, but man, I need to. I don't have any that I would say are just awesome right now. I need to do better with that myself. So maybe I can provide some of those when we follow up here, as I think more
Yeah.
about that and do that. I'm This is an excuse. I'm just so swamped doing all my other stuff that I'm not very good at doing that. So I got to get better at that. So if you guys
Yeah.
have some recommendations, that'd be great.
I was gonna say, yeah. So I think Tim asked the question, but if it looks like currently we have about 90 people watching. So if the other 90 people that are on have thoughts about their favorite podcast, maybe we can all share it on there. Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know things are crazy and busy, and you're working with athletes at Duke, and you're a professor trying to manage class. And so, Positive Coaching Lines just is so honored to have you be on our National Advisory Board. And, I know that people watching are going to find these tips and tools really helpful, going back to their schools and their, communities. And so, again, if you've, enjoyed this session with Greg, like please share it with your community just by clicking the share button. And then again, every Tuesday and Thursday, we'll be doing Facebook Lives. Tuesdays will be with a PCA trainer. And then Thursdays will be with a National Advisory Board member. Last Thursday we had Lindsay Gottlieb. This week is Greg Dale. Thank you again, and stay tuned for who it'll be next week. So, Greg, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks,
Stay
Christy.
safe,
Thanks for hosting this.
stay
Yeah.
healthy. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.